All right, guys, let's continue on with Free to Choose. So this is chapter 9, The Cure for Inflation. The Cure for Inflation. Chapter 9. And this is a subchapter, Why the Excessive Monetary Growth. So why is money being printed and just growing? Why the monetary growth? So why the excessive monetary growth? It only makes sense, right? People are being crooked. I mean, it seems so. Let's see what Milton Friedman has to say. So chapter 9, The Cure for Inflation. Of Free to Choose, Why the Excessive Monetary Growth. The proposal that inflation is a monetary phenomenon is important. Yet it is only the beginning of an answer to the causes and cures for inflation. Monetary phenomena. It is important because it guides the search for basic causes and limits possible cures. But it is only the beginning of an answer because the deeper question is why excessive monetary growth occurs. Whatever was true for tobacco money or money linked to silver and gold with today's paper money, excessive monetary growth and hence inflation is produced by governments. In the United States, the accelerated monetary growth during the past 15 years or so has occurred for three related reasons. First, the rapid growth in government spending. Second, the government's full employment policy. Third, a mistaken policy pursued by the Federal Reserve System. So these are the three related reasons right here. Three related reasons for the accelerated monetary growth. Three related reasons for the accelerated monetary growth. So the first one was the rapid growth in government spending. First, the rapid growth in government spending. Second, the government's full employment policy. Third, a mistaken policy pursued by the Federal Reserve System. So I'm sure he's going to break it down maybe. So higher government spending will not lead to more rapid monetary growth and inflation if additional spending is financed either by taxes or by borrowing from the public. You can't just print money out of fucking nowhere, right? In that case, government has more to spend, the public has less. Higher government spending is matched by lower private spending for consumption and investment. However, taxing and borrowing from the public are politically unattractive ways to finance additional government spending. Many of us welcome the additional government spending. Few of us welcome additional taxes. Government borrowing from the public diverts funds from private uses by raising interest rates, making it both more expensive and more difficult for individuals to get mortgages on new homes and for businesses to borrow money. Or raising interest rates is an interest rate is the price for borrowing money. So if I want to borrow $100, you say, yeah, I'll give you $100, but at a 9% interest rate. That 9% is the charge for borrowing that money. The only other way to finance higher government spending is by increasing the quantity of money. As we noted in Chapter 3, the U.S. government can do that by having the U.S. Treasury, one branch of government, sell bonds to the Federal Reserve System. And they get cash. So now they have cash now. They sold debt. They sold debt to the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve gives them cash for that debt, and now there's more cash for themselves. The Federal Reserve pays for those bonds either with freshly printed Federal Reserve notes or by entering a deposit on its books to the credit of the U.S. Treasury. The Treasury can then pay its bills with either the cash or a check drawn on its account at the Fed. When the additional high-powered money is deposited in commercial banks by its initial recipients, it serves as reserves for them and as the basis for a much larger addition to the quantity of money. Financing government spending by increasing the quantity of money is often extremely attractive to both the president and members of Congress. It enables them to increase government spending, providing goodies for their constituents without having to vote for taxes to pay for them and without having to borrow from the public. A second source of higher monetary growth in the United States in recent years has been the attempt to produce full employment. I wonder what that means, though. Let's see what he's saying. The objective, as for many government programs, is admirable, but the results have not been. Full employment is a much more complex and ambiguous concept than it appears to be on the surface. In a dynamic world in which new products emerge and old ones disappear, demand shifts from one product to another, innovation alters methods of production, and so on without end, it is desirable to have a good deal of labor mobility. People change from one job to another and often are idle for a time in between. Some people leave a job they do not like before they have found another. Young people entering the labor force take time to find jobs and experiment with different kinds of jobs. In addition, obstacles to the free operation of the labor market, trade union restrictions, minimum wages, and the like increase the difficulty of matching worker and job. Under these circumstances, what average number of persons employed corresponds to full employment? As with spending and taxes, there is here too an asymmetry. As to spending and taxes, there is an asymmetry. Measures that can be represented as adding to employment are politically attractive. Measures that can be represented as adding to unemployment are politically unattractive. Measures that can be represented as adding to unemployment are politically unattractive. The result is to impart a bias to government policy in the direction of adopting unduly ambitious targets of full employment. The relation to inflation is twofold. First, government spending can be represented as adding to employment, government taxes as adding to unemployment by reducing private spending. Hence, the full employment policy reinforces the tendency for government to increase spending and lower taxes and to finance any resulting deficit by increasing the quantity of money rather than by taxes or borrowing from the public. Second, the Federal Reserve System can increase the quantity of money in ways other than financing government spending. It can do so by buying outstanding government bonds, paying for them with newly created high-powered money. That enables the banks to make a larger volume of private loans, which can also be represented as adding to employment. Under pressure to promote full employment, the Fed's monetary policy has had the same inflationary bias as the government's fiscal policy. These policies have not succeeded in producing full employment, but they have produced inflation. As Prime Minister James Callaghan put it in a courageous talk to a British Labour Party conference in September 1776. That's a long, no, 1976, excuse me. We used to think that you could just spend your way out of a recession and increase employment by cutting taxes and boosting government spending. I tell you in all candor that that option no longer exists, and that insofar as it ever did exist, it only worked by injecting bigger doses of inflation into the economy, followed by higher levels of unemployment as the next step. Followed by higher levels of unemployment as the next step. It's interesting. That is the history of the past 20 years. The third source of higher monetary growth in the United States in recent years has been a mistaken policy by the Federal Reserve System. So a third source of higher monetary growth in the United States. Third source of higher monetary growth in the United States in recent years has been a mistaken policy by the Federal Reserve System. Let me a little side note. mistaken policy by the Federal Reserve System. Not only has the Fed's policy had an inflationary bias because of pressures to promote full employment, but that bias has been exacerbated by its attempt to pursue two incompatible objectives. The Fed has the power to control the quantity of money and gives lip service to that objective. But like Demetrius in Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, who shuns Helena, who is in love with him to pursue Hermia, who loves another, the Fed has given its heart not to controlling the quantity of money, but to controlling interest rates. It's funny, I have that book. I need to read it. I just bought it. Something that it does not have the power to do. So interest rates supposed to be controlled by the supply and demand of a free market. The result has been failure on both fronts, wide swings in both money and interest rates. These swings, too, have had an inflationary bias. With memories of its disastrous mistake from 1929 to 1933, the Fed has been much prompter in correcting a swing toward a low rate of monetary growth than in correcting a swing toward a high rate of monetary growth. Meaning the Depression, there really wasn't nothing. There was no money. It wasn't an inflationary problem. It was the fact that they didn't print money so people could to to stimulate the economy. They should have printed more money during the Depression, so it could have stimulated the economy. So what he's saying right here, their disastrous mistake from 1929 to 1933, when they didn't do shit about it, the Fed has been much prompter in correcting a swing toward a low rate of monetary growth than in correcting a swing toward too much monetary growth, which hence is inflation. The end result of higher government spending, the full employment policy, and the Fed's obsession with interest rates has been a roller coaster along a rising path. Inflation has risen and then fallen. Each rise has carried inflation to a higher level than the preceding peak. Each fall has left inflation above its preceding trough. All the time, government spending has been rising as a fraction of income. Government tax receipts, too, have been rising as a fraction of income, but not quite as fast as spending. So the deficit, too, has been rising as a fraction of income. These developments are not unique to the United States or to recent decades. Since time immemorial, sovereigns, whether kings, emperors, or parliaments, have been tempted to resort to increasing the quantity of money to acquire resources, to wage wars, construct monuments, or for other purposes. They have often succumbed to the temptation whenever they have inflation followed close behind. Nearly 2,000 years ago, the Roman Emperor Diocletian, inflated by debasing the coinage, that is, replacing silver coins by lookalikes that had less and less silver and more of a worthless alloy until they became no more than base metal washed over with silver. Modern governments do so by printing paper money and making entries on books, but the ancient method has not entirely disappeared. The once full bodied silver coins of the United States are now copper coins washed over. Full bodied silver coins are now copper washed over. So even a quarter is copper, huh? Not even with silver, but with nickel. And a small sized Susan B. Anthony dollar coin has been introduced to replace what was once a full bodied silver coin. Susan B. Anthony dollar? Never heard of that before. So these developments are not unique to the United States or to recent decades. Since time immemorial, sovereigns, whether kings, emperors, or parliaments, have been tempted to resort to increasing the quantity of money to acquire resources, to wage wars, construct monuments, or for other purposes. I don't know. I don't think he was insinuating what, like, It just, I don't know. He's talking about the practice of printing money for the sake of. He just, I don't know. It's a good one though. It's a good read.